Hi guys, Allison here, the Bored Housewife. Thank you so much for joining me for another week's episode of The Bored Housewife. This week I am talking about adversity. I know that probably sounds a little strange with it, now we're rolling into the holiday season. Thanksgiving was just Thursday, and I hope you guys had a great time with your family and friends. Um, Definitely a little different for us this year, which maybe is bringing about this idea. But I think it's a really good idea. I think it's really relatable to people during this time of year. And I'll get into all of that in a minute. Um, but yeah, the holidays brings out a really interesting time for people. And, whether you're someone like me who loves Christmas, loves the holiday season, and just that warm feeling that it brings, there's still some times when it can be a little tough and, changes happen. And I think all of us can now fully say that we felt that after the last year or two of dealing with a pandemic, and not, maybe not being able to see some of our family and friends that we're used to seeing. And life goes on and things happen, and so some of us might even be feeling a little bit more so this year than other years, and what we've missed out on, and all of that. So it is going to be an uplifting episode. It's not going to be sad or a downer. I'm bringing this about because adversity is so important in helping us learn things and be able to move on from moments when we are able to acknowledge these things that we're experiencing. So I'm going to get into all of that very soon. But yeah, cheers, guys. Let's have some fun. All right. So this week I am just sipping on some wine. It is a red wine, obviously, and it's a Chianti. The brand is Da Vinci. 2019. Not an expensive wine by any means, but pretty good. So if you're looking for an inexpensive, decent wine to sip on, this is good. Hopefully soon I'll be able to start doing like drink tutorials and stuff again, but I don't have any of my stuff. I was like, maybe I'll do a hot toddy this week, but I don't even have a coffee mug. I don't know why I didn't pack a coffee mug in the express shipment, but as you can see, my surroundings have changed a little bit. We are no longer in the hotel, so that is good. We have been placed in a house on base. I was very upset about it, and I just, I don't know, I got my hopes up and I shouldn't have. I had originally mentally went into this thinking like, if we get on base, off base, I can see the pros and cons of both, and so it'll be what it'll be, and kind of like just let the universe handle it. And my mom kind of made a joke and said that I asked for this because some of my top priorities were to have like a 3-bedroom, and a parking spot, and like some American amenities like a washer and dryer in the house or unit, whatever, and also a dishwasher. And so there were some things that were very high on my priority list that I'm not sure if we would have been able to find out in town and not on base. From some of the stuff that I saw and listings that I saw on the internet, I would think that we would be able to kind of find that in our price range, but at the same time, sometimes people put out that stuff kind of as like bait, and then when you like go look at things, it's like that's not what it is. So one of our friends here, new friends here, told us that like a lot of the houses and apartments here don't have kitchens. So I don't know if that's correct or not, but that's what they told us. And so it's part of the reason why they have so many restaurants and things, is because people go out to eat a lot instead of like having like cooking in their house. Or if they cook in their house, they kind of cook like simply, I guess. So I don't know. But for someone who has gotten into cooking and really likes that, and who likes her dishwasher, because I hate doing dishes, and who also really needs like a washer and dryer in her house, because again, like I can handle it if it's in the building or like down the hall or something. But from living in New York City for 7 years and not really having a washer dryer in that time frame, and having to like lug your laundry around everywhere, it is a must for me now. And even having it in the building is like not good enough. Like I need it in my house, because it's just so annoying when you have to like think about having to like get it out of the dryer or washer right away to be considerate of other people. But anyways, adversity, right? So these are things that, over time I've kind of got stuck in my ways. So I'm looking right now at the positives. It took me a good solid week of being angry about living on base. There's just a lot of little things that this city is very spread out. We luckily live across from this area called American Village. So our base is pretty small. There's not a lot on it. So we have to like drive to other bases to take advantage of like the on-base grocery store, which they call the commissary, and also the exchange, which is like basically like a Walmart type store. It has like clothes and like household goods and like pretty much everything that you think you could need like is there, and they typically have like nice brands and stuff there as well. So it's not just like like sometimes Walmart doesn't have like the nicest of things. Maybe more like a Target. Yeah, so you have some nicer brands. And it's tax free, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, so it's just like, we still have to drive to places, and like, I'm really eager to like, shop out in town and all of that, but it's just kind of intimidating trying to find parking. It's very, pretty condensed here. It's not like as bad as New York City, but parking can still be challenging, and some of the roads, like when you get off of their like highways, they're pretty small and stuff, and so it's just kind of confusing trying to figure out like how to get around, and Google Maps doesn't always work exactly how you want it to. So I just like in my mind, I'm just like, oh, if I could just walk to these places, it would make my life so much easier. But even though our base is small, it's still like spread out. So my best way of like explaining it is that we're like a little suburb town, like a little, like, yeah, pretty much. Like we have a gym and a post office on here. And then the majority of it is just housing, and there's a school on the space as well. But then like we're surrounded by this huge city, so it's kind of different. But I am deciding to be okay with it because I don't have any other choice. And I do see the pros. We get to live in a big house. We have a 3-bedroom. It's huge. I'm gonna have to buy more stuff to fill this place up. Today I'm bringing you guys this episode from my kitchen. But one of the reasons why I wanted a 3-bedroom is because I wanted to be able to maintain a guest room for hopefully when friends and family come visit, but also have an office that I can work out of and kind of have my stuff set up. Because I think I've talked to you guys about that before we left Alabama, how like my setup that I have, and this is like really bare bones right now, like my phone is like being set up by boxes, and I'm really hoping that it doesn't topple over during the episode. But to be able to keep up my my tripod and my microphone and the lights and all of that I use, and then have a desk with a computer to be able to like edit and write and stuff, and just have, you know, a little sanctuary for myself was really top priority for me. And being able to also keep that guest room too was like really important. So the fact that we have such a big place, and also have like neighbors around us who speak English, and you know, the gym is like 5-minute walk from here. So, you know, I really can't, and it's free. Like, going to that is free. We don't have to pay for that. So it's just like, you know, as pissy as I want to be about shit, like, I can't really complain. And also, our house is like brandly renovated. So again, there's people, I guess this base is kind of divided between old and new, and we happen to get the new side. So like even some of Cliff's bosses and stuff, like they're higher up, like officers, and what you would think be entitled to like a nicer living scenario, and you know, we pretty much have the same thing as them. So pretty cool that that's the case. And again, like, even though it is spread out and it's a bit of a walk to like go to American Village and like kind of look around there, and that area is just full of restaurants and shopping and stuff, it's still at least walkable, and I'm hoping to get a bike, and maybe that will make it even more accessible. But so yeah, so let's get into the episode. It's about adversity. I am certainly feeling some adversity these days. But the episode title, Adversity, What Is It Good For? And, you know, we all have different levels of adversity, right? So what I might experience and feel like is a really hard time, you know, it's all objective. Objective. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Sorry. I'm still loony, guys, so bear with me. But it's objective, right? So it's like when it's happening to you, it feels like the worst thing in the world. Obviously, you know, we're very privileged. If you live in America, or if you're American, you're a very privileged person. I mean, here I am bitching about not being able to live out in town, and meanwhile, like, I have a 2-story, 3-bedroom townhome basically, and you know, I'm upset about that. And it's like, okay, sure, I don't get to have like maybe as an enriching cultural experience as I think that I might have if we live out in town. But like, think of how many people would love to live in a place like this and like don't get to. Is it the like most aesthetically pleasing place in the world? No, but it has some really nice qualities to it. And you know, the aesthetic wise, like I can help that, right? I can add decoration, and they said I can put holes in the walls, so I'm really excited. I'm going to find some, you know, maybe some interesting, we can't paint, but like maybe I can find some interesting like Japanese tapestry or something to kind of like hang on the wall and make it look neat. So, you know, like for me in that moment, it sucks and it's a hard thing to get over. But like, you know, I said there's people who are homeless, there's people who live out in town and don't have kitchens, and I'm here romanticizing that, and it's like the reality of it is that it's really hard to live without a working kitchen. So, you know, it's hard when I'm going to talk about adversity today. Obviously, like someone might watch this or listen to this and like think to themselves like, this girl is like a privileged brat. And if you're that person, just whatever, because everybody has experiences in their life, and we don't necessarily always get to choose them, right? That is adversity. You don't choose the scenario that you're put into, and you're asked to deal with it. And I don't think it's really fair when we're talking about like personal growth and like experiences that we're having to judge it against anybody else's, because you might never have an opportunity to have that experience. There's certain things that, and I'm going to get into that in a minute, that, you know, if you're born into something, or if you make a few life choices and these things are happening to you, or even, a natural thing could happen to you, a natural disaster or something. These aren't things that people can necessarily like choose their way into. It's just something that either happens to you or it doesn't, and then you have to deal with it. And so we're not going to judge against other people's adversity today. We're just going to talk about it as a whole, because we all have hard times. We all have these experiences and moments in our lives that feel really tough. And so that's what we're talking about today. And even if it's, as bad as stubbing your toe, or, falling on your face, flat broke, in poverty, homeless, whatever those experiences are, you have to figure out how to work through them, and you learn from them, So that's what adversity, that's what I mean when I'm talking about adversity today. And I think that, again, what I'm going to say and talk about can be applied to whatever feels like this hard time or this difficult time in your life. That's what we're talking about today. So why do I want to talk about adversity during this really joyful time in our year, the holiday season? Why do I want to talk about it? Well, first of all, because I think that this time of year brings a lot of different emotions, expectations, feelings, obligations. So I think that this time of year also can kind of exaggerate a feeling as well. And I'm not saying that to be like, it's not justified. Again, like I said, we're not judging people on how they're feeling, but like, I'm going to take this example, and I'm not sure if this is exactly how my mother felt or not. But I feel like she won't feel like I'm putting words in her mouth or making her feel like it was differently. But, growing up, a lot of you know, but if you don't, I had a single mother, and although we had help from my grandparents and stuff and lived with them for a while, she had me when she was very young, and, raised me by herself for a really long time. And so, obviously there were times where it was tough and money was tight. And I think that this is a time of year when, like, parents especially have this feeling and this want to give their children everything that they want on their Christmas list, or, give them better than what they had. That's the dream as we like continue and progress, right? Is to have like give your children these opportunities that you weren't given. And so this year, and I can't remember how young I was, and to be perfectly honest, I had no idea that money was even tight. That's how clever my mom was. But she was like, shit, I don't have any money to really get her anything for Christmas. And so she was kind of planned ahead a little bit, and she found this like sale or something where you could get little Barbies for like a few bucks or something. And I was obsessed with Barbies at the time, so she got like several different Barbies, and like could get little accessories and everything for them. And I don't remember how much she said she spent on me for Christmas that year, but we'll say like $50. Maybe it was $100, but it probably was way less than that. I don't remember what she had told me, but it wasn't much. And but $50 is still $50. And when you're trying to like, still pay for groceries, and maybe at the time she was like saving up for her house as well. She's trying to do all this stuff on her own, and that's really hard. And so she wants to like not have me wake up on Christmas and not have Santa come and not, have anything from her mom. So she had to get clever. And so I'm sure, in that moment there was this deep sense of adversity, and that realization that, not having enough money to give your daughter the best Christmas ever. And like I said, I don't even remember everything. I do remember this year when I did get like a lot of Barbie stuff, and I was over the moon excited for it because, like I said, I loved Barbies. So even if it wasn't necessarily like name brand Barbie stuff, I think the Barbies were like name brand. But the other accessories, like, I don't know if they were name brand or not, but I was just like ecstatic to have all this new stuff, and like I didn't care, and I like added it to the collection that I had and was able to have so much fun. So, my mom didn't have enough, and I feel like, another time of the year where, she might be struggling a little bit with money, there isn't that, and the reason why I'm sharing you this story is like, there isn't that like extra thing that you have to figure out. So if it's like March and you're like, ooh, it's a little tight this month, and maybe we eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every night for dinner because that's all she has money for, then that's what you do, and it's not a big deal. But when you're in that scenario and it's Christmas time, and you have this little girl that's asking for presents from Santa Claus, and has a wish list and circling everything in the Toys R Us catalog, it's like, okay, now here's the pressure, and this one hurts a little bit. It's now, not only are we just eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every night, but how am I going to get her the things that she wants for Christmas, and, not go into extreme debt over it, or whatever, not go without other things that are necessities. And so that's what I mean, like, this time of year, like, seems to pull things out. Maybe, there was a loss in your family. You really miss that person, because this time of year is when we get together with people, when we get together with family and friends, and it's obvious when that person isn't here anymore. Maybe it's not wanting to be in certain obligations that you have. So again, like, it's all about getting together with people, but sometimes people want just a little bit more of a quiet time. They want to relax in what this season is rather than go, go, go. And, we have this thing and that thing and the kids thing and, whatever. And so it's like the season is supposed to be about this one thing, right? It's supposed to be about, if you're religious, like the birth of Christ. It's supposed to be about, family coming together and just enjoying their time. It's supposed to be about kindness and giving. It's supposed to be about these really more simple ideas. But then with, more of the commercialization of Christmas and Thanksgiving and, what the season is, look at Black Friday, all the shopping, all the giving, gift giving, and all of that. It turns into something different, and it can be overwhelming, and the pressure can really feel high, and having, like, again, the expectations and the obligations of showing up to things and maybe not wanting to. So again, this is why I'm having this episode, and it's not going to just focus on the Christmas stuff, but I think it's an interesting time to talk about this because people are feeling a lot of different things right now. So I think also a lot about adversity is, and I'm going to make several points as to, like, why there's this idea of it, right? So if we're Play-Doh, right? And I think I'm going to get into Play-Doh a little bit more in the next year. Super easy to read, so don't feel intimidated by it at all. But he talks about these forms, okay? And so when you say whatever this idea or thing is, there's a form of it that is in its perfect version. And so when we talk about things, or when we, like, idolize them or idealize them, I think is what I'm looking for there. You're talking about this perfect version. So, like, you have a horse. Everyone has this perfect version of a horse in their head and what that is to them. And that would be horse with a capital H, okay? So this is the form of a horse. Everything below that, everything that we see in the natural world, right, is just an imitation of what that is, okay? So adversity, right? what's adversity? Now, this is my interpretation, okay? This is my philosophical input. You might have a different idea of it. I would love to hear if anyone would like to share. But this is kind of what I'm talking off today and making my points too. So, one of the points of adversity, I think, is so that when we overcome it and we come out of it, we are able to have this feeling of gratefulness, thankfulness, and have this retrospect of what a difficult time feels like, and then be able to enjoy a better time, right? Thanksgiving in itself, I feel like, encapsulates this sentiment of adversity, is that, we gather and get together and are thankful for the things that our ancestors coming over into the new world, had to go through. And that's what that day represents, right? Is this coming together of two different people, embracing each other's differences and cultures, giving in different ways, sharing not only like knowledge, sharing, an experience together, all this sort of stuff. So I think Thanksgiving really kind of encapsulates the idea of adversity, because, it's a time that not only do we think about what our ancestors went through for us to be here today, but also a time for us to reflect on our own lives and think about where we're at. So, a lot of times you might think of it as like, remember when we had that Thanksgiving and we didn't have a turkey, we had McDonald's that day because that's all we could afford. Remember that Thanksgiving when, we got in a huge fight because our families were mad at each other. Like, I don't know, like, remember this time in our life when we couldn't do these sorts of things, or we lived in this tiny house, or, whatever it is for you. We weren't able to visit family because we didn't have enough gas money to get there. Like, whatever that is, like, Thanksgiving is a marker for us to kind of like look back in whatever scenario you're in, even if you're in that scenario at the time where you're in this tiny house, trying to pull together a Thanksgiving meal. It gives you something to feel grateful for. Like, I'm happy that we have this, scenario that we can share with people, in whatever way it is. So I think like having these holidays, having this season of holiday really brings out a lot of those feelings. And even when it might be that tough holiday, maybe it is, like I was saying, that year when we're having chicken nuggets from McDonald's because we can't afford to buy a turkey. How are you making that still fun time? Like, how are you like embracing that experience of whatever that is? So I think part of adversity is just bringing out that feeling of gratefulness, bringing out that feeling of retrospect, like allowing you to sort of think back on a time, or having an experience that you'll later get to think back on a time and feel that gratefulness, that thankfulness of when times were a little more difficult. And I've talked about before when we were going through the Art of Living workbook, not to like label experiences as like good or bad. And so I think this really relates to adversity, because I think we think of it as a bad thing. But the reality of it is that if you don't label experiences as good or bad, or as one as like better than another, and you just realize that what we're experiencing is something that we just need to kind of embrace and learn from, I think that also kind of brings out a point of adversity, because when you sit in something and it's, something that feels difficult or a harder time than another one, and I'm being very careful not to use good or bad experience, but a, quote, bad experience, right? If you just think of it in that way and you're just like, my life is shitty, I can't afford turkey for my family. We have to go to McDonald's. Like, this is like a weird example. But like, or, I can't be with my family this year because I can't afford gas to get home. If you're thinking about stuff in this way, right? Yeah, it's not a great time. It doesn't feel good, but it's giving you an opportunity to turn it around. So you might be able to learn from it in, the way my mom kind of did, where, okay, or like problem solve the scenario. So maybe it's a few weeks before, or, maybe it's the next year. Okay, I didn't have enough money to get turkey for my family, or like prepare this big meal, or I didn't have enough money to pay for gas to like get to my family's home this year. Or maybe it's not money related. Maybe it's I really don't want this person to come to Thanksgiving. They always ruin it. Maybe it's I feel ill this year. I have a sickness. Like, whatever it is, whatever those feelings are, or those experiences that you're having, the adversity of it all will help you prepare or help you problem solve for it. So if it's a money issue, maybe if it's a few weeks ahead of time, you can problem solve and figure out how to make a few extra bucks to like make the holiday special. Maybe you have to wait until the next year, but then remember, learn from, okay, last year's Thanksgiving was a little rough because we didn't have enough money to do the things that we wanted to do. How am I going to prepare for that in the following year? So that next year can be, table full of food, or I can have enough money to buy a plane ticket to get home, whatever it is. If you're ill and you're not feeling good, like, how can you use that experience to then, feel more grateful, or just even in that moment be like, I don't feel my best, but like my family is here and I'm just happy that, I can at least sit and watch and enjoy what's going on around me. If it's, a personal issue with somebody and you're like, I really don't want this person to come to Thanksgiving, or I don't want to go to their house. How can you get creative? How can you figure out maybe some different plans, or how can you just decide like, okay, I don't really care for this person, but I'm gonna stay in the kitchen the whole time, or whatever. Sometimes it's about getting creative. But it's living in these moments, having these experiences that we rather wouldn't have sometimes. And that was the point in when we were talking in the Art of Living book, is that not every experience gets to be a wonderful, euphoric experience of happiness. We have to have highs and lows. That's just how life is. And, we try our best to learn and, make things better as time goes on. And that's the idea, right? But it's about living in these moments, and it's about living in the adversity and accepting it, and appreciating what the experience is doing to you. Because I think when we appreciate these more difficult times, the times that aren't euphorically fun, is really when we become more complete people. So this kind of goes into my next point, where I think people who have more adversity in their life are actually the more fortunate ones. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not saying like tragedy and tragic experiences are a good thing. Like, obviously they're really hard. If you have a hurricane and it comes and ruins your home, that's a really hard time, right? But I feel like when you have those experiences, you have a deeper and enriched idea of humanity, and of, empathy for other people and for other things. So if you're somebody who, grows up with a silver spoon in your mouth, not saying you can't have your hard times, because of course you can. Again, we're not judging people's experiences. But somebody who grows up really privileged in a monetary way versus someone who grows up in poverty, that person who grows up in poverty and is maybe able to overcome obstacles and, eventually get themselves out of poverty and, not that they're necessarily the richest person in the world, but just that, they overcome poverty and they live in a more comfortable scenario. Sometimes I think that those people actually are more fortunate because it's like they've experienced so much adversity and they've experienced a lot of different things and they've had to overcome a lot more obstacles. Not that it makes them necessarily a better person, but they have a better understanding of people. And I think that a lot of philosophy and a lot of just when good things are happening in the world, it's coming from people who really understand different life experiences and different scenarios. It's going to be really hard for a really wealthy person who was brought into it, by no choice, born into this. It's going to be really hard for them to have a complete understanding of somebody who has absolutely nothing. And, yes, you can look at a scenario and be like, oh, okay, they have nothing. But, is it empathy as somebody who, has had it rough and has had times when they had to go without, has been told, no, you can't have that because we don't have enough money, or, had to whatever, and again, I'm not saying that these people are better than each other, because somebody who is extremely wealthy, they can understand. I don't understand, but here I want to contribute or do something with my money to help those less fortunate. Or, whatever in that way. And then, you have the people on the other side. They're the people that can kind of advocate for those less fortunate because they've been there. And so it's kind of cool. And I'm not saying that people are better or not. I'm just saying that personally me, and maybe it's just coming because I've not always had the easiest time in my life. And I've, experienced and have been told different things in my life from the experiences of my family and whatnot. And having my own experiences as a young adult and all of that, it feels really good to be able to be empathetic towards certain scenarios and situations, and just, helps to have a more well-rounded understanding. And I think that sometimes those ideas and that kind of, I don't want to say skill, but just that attribute, I guess, goes a long way. And I think it's kind of downplayed a little bit. So my point is if you're somebody who's had kind of more of these difficult experiences in your life and you're trying to work through them right now, or you had, I think you're a really fortunate person in a different way than somebody who has grown up with everything, because both people are very fortunate in different ways, but you've been able to have this really enriched perspective that not everyone gets to have, and I think that's really cool. And so that's kind of my point there. So when we were on this trip of ours, it was a month-long trip. If you guys did not know, my husband and I, we went down one side of Florida, down through the Keys, and then up the other side, and then we went up into the East Coast a little bit, southeast, and up to Charleston, and then we went over through Kentucky and hit some national parks and stuff before we came out here to Japan. So Florida, we camped a lot, and I don't know what I was thinking. It was all my idea, which was good because then I didn't have anyone else to blame except myself. I couldn't be mad at my husband because I'm well, I made all the reservations and I decided that this was going to be fun. And don't get me wrong, it was really fun. But I have crazy arachnophobia, so I'm very scared of spiders. And just like creepy crawly bugs in general, don't like them. And nobody likes them, but like my fear of some of them are like next level. I think this trip that we went on helped a lot. But I was really nervous coming out here to Japan because people had told me about these huntsman spiders, and they're huge. They're like this big, like they can be as big as your hand. So, someone who has arachnophobia, that is terrifying thought, right? So, like one of the first places we camped at, I think it was the first place we camped at, like, and I might have said this in last week's episode, but I'm going to explain it again so that I can get into the next part of the story. Yeah, they were everywhere. And so as soon as it got dark out, we noticed one by our fire. And thank goodness I saw that one. Or maybe not thank goodness, I don't know. But I saw it by the fire and I caught it because I had a headlamp on and the light from the headlamp reflected off of its eye or eyes. And it looked like this really kind of cool, like green iridescent jewel. It was really pretty, but then you realize what's attached to it, and it's like a giant spider. And these weren't as big as your hand, but I'm pretty sure they're still like a class of huntsman spiders because we then saw it eat a live bug, and it just went after it. We're like, oh my god. But then I look around and there's just probably hundreds, thousands of these little green jewel-like things out in the grass, and I was freaking out. I was like, I think in shock. My husband was like, honey, I'm like so impressed that you're still sitting here. And I was like, I literally have nowhere to go. Like, I'm afraid to get out of the chair because like how the campsite was set up was like there was grass around the outside of the site, but like in the site it was kind of like gravelly and like dirt. So they weren't, other than that one that I saw, I didn't really see any others. They didn't try to crawl on our tent or anything. They were very much about just kind of sitting and waiting for like little bugs and stuff to come around. But it was terrifying to see. And there was like this other really gross bug. And so I just was like kind of beside myself and didn't really know what to do or like how to handle it. So luckily, like I said, when we went to bed, there wasn't any around the tent, and they're pretty big, so I didn't think that they would be able to like get in the tent or anything. So now, fast forward, we are like I think almost a week or a week later, maybe a little less. We're in the Everglades. And I guess the Everglades has a dry and wet season. I did not realize this. But we pull up to the campsite, and it wasn't what I was expecting at all. It was very wide and open, okay? And the campsites were all grass. And so I guess I thought we were going to be camping a little bit more of like it looking a little bit more like the Everglades. I don't know. My expectations were really different, I guess. I don't know. But I was like, okay, well, this looks really nice. And so we get out of the car, and I feel a few mosquito bites, which are mosquitoes. And, I expected there to be some, but there was so many mosquitoes. And it was like as soon as we got out, they started swarming us. So we got the tent up pretty quickly, and then we were trying to make dinner, and we couldn't even make dinner. And then I was trying to I ended up going and sitting in the tent, and I was just killing mosquitoes inside the tent. And they had already gotten me. And I'm super allergic to mosquitoes, and so whenever I get bit by them, I get these giant welts on my legs, and they're so gross. And they itch really bad. And I just was like, oh my God. And so I had these spandex leggings on. They bit through the spandex. I had other long sleeve shirts on. They bit through my shirts. it was horrible. So Cliff, luckily, like, took mercy on me because he knows how bad I get it, and he was getting it too, but, like, he doesn't react as, his body doesn't react to the bites as, like, much as mine does. So he made the sandwiches, and he, like, brought them into the tent, and he brought me a glass of wine into the tent. And we just sat in there, like, even trying to get the fire going. Usually, like, the smoke and stuff will kind of help get them away. No, nothing would work. So then we had to, like, go to the bathroom, and I just was so miserable. They were just swarming everywhere. I've never been swarmed like that before. And there were spiders out crossing the road everywhere. And my husband's like, oh my God, there's so many spiders. I was like, I don't even give a shit. Okay? I will take spiders any day over these things. Like, spiders don't do this the same way mosquitoes do. Like, this is so miserable. So why am I telling you this? It's perspective, right? So experiencing this adversity of crazy amount of mosquitoes really forced me into appreciating when there's no mosquitoes. And yeah, maybe I'm sitting there surrounded by a bunch of spiders I don't like, but these spiders could give a shit less about me, right? Like, unless I, like, get in their way, they're probably not even going to try to hurt me or anything. They're not interested in what I've got. Whereas these mosquitoes, that's all they want. They want my blood. And so I was just like, could not care less about the spiders. I was pissed that the spiders weren't doing more of their job and eating all of these mosquitoes, but there was just so many of them. And so, yeah, we sat in the tent, and we're, like, killing mosquitoes and stuff. And then finally we, like, kind of laid down, and my husband had the worst time trying to fall asleep because his head kind of, like, because he's so tall, like, touches the side of the tent. And he could hear them outside all night long, like, and so we ended up having to, like, play music to, like, fall asleep because it was, like, maddening to him, like, how loud they were in his ear. And so, yeah, it was just a really tough night, not very much sleep. Itching. Luckily, I had witch hazel, and I had some other, like, Benadryl cream because I'd gotten a few mosquito bites, like, expecting that, you know, but not expecting this. And so I did not look good for a long time. My legs especially were just horrible. One of them had, like, bitten my eye. So my eye for, like, a day was all swollen. Like, they bit my eyelid. I didn't even know they could do that, but they did. So yeah, and then the next morning, just because this is a funny story, we did not want to get up, and I was like, okay, I think if we, like, wait till the sun comes up and stuff. And it's been, like, 12 hours, guys, since I peed, because I was like, I'm not going out there again. And I was like, oh my God, I can't hold it any longer. And so we get out, and we just start, like, spraying ourselves down. I'm, like, pulling up the tent. We, like, had gotten everything in the tent ready, so when we opened the door, like, Cliff just, like, took it and ran to the car. We're trying to load everything up. All these mosquitoes are getting inside of the car. So when we finally, you know, we're getting bit, and, you know, they're swarming all over us, and they, like, would get in your ear too. It was just crazy, guys. We get in the car, and they're just, like, everywhere. There's, like, hundreds of them in the car. And I'm like, oh my God. So we, like, blasted the air conditioning and rolled down the windows. And I'm like, fucking drive! Just fucking drive! And Cliff's like, ah! So we're, like, driving out of the Everglades like mad people. We were supposed to stay there for 3 nights. We stayed 1 night, and I'm calling it a win because we had gotten the tent up, and then Cliff was like, should we just leave? Because this is not fun. And I'm like, no, like, we got the tent up, like, let's just stay the night. So, yeah. that was the Everglades story. Now I'll tell you the Key Largo story. So, Key Largo, we did not have any other bugs except no-see-ums. And for those of you who do not know what no-see-ums are, they're kind of like a little gnat type thing. They are super small and they bite you, and it actually kind of hurts when they bite you. So you might not like see them flying around, but then like you'll feel them like kind of get you. And they're itchy, and unfortunately the tent that we have, the netting on it was not small enough so they could get through the netting of our tent. So we escaped Everglades and are trying to figure out where we should go. Should we get a hotel? Should we, go to Miami early? Like, because we were headed to Miami after the Everglades. And so I wanted to spend more time in the Keys, and I had found a while back this campground that I thought looked really cool and had some fun stuff. And I was like, oh, that might be really fun to do. But they didn't have any campsites available. So I looked back into it again, and sure enough, they did. They had a campsite available for us. And so we actually had 2 separate campsites there, and because of how we had to book it, we booked one for one night and one for the other night. So we're like, okay, no big deal. Like, it's just our tent. Like, we can pick it up and move it over, whatever. So we get there. There's a little beach there. We were able to go snorkeling out in the ocean. Like, it was a really fun first day, okay? So we get to our campsite. We're setting up our tent. It feels really nice outside. We make dinner. Everything's wonderful, okay? Nighttime hits. Time to go to bed. It was so hot and humid. There was no wind flow through that place at all. Most of the campsites had RVs on them, and so, or like campers and stuff. So it wasn't like, it was fine for you to have a tent there, but it was more of like kind of an older crowd that had like, like the snow bunnies, I think they call them. Like, people come down from the north that are like retired and like camp at these places during the wintertime. And so it was so hot and we were so miserable. So I think in the Everglades there might have been no-see-ums as well, but we were able to like, it was cool enough and there was like a breeze coming through that we were able to like put the sheet that we had like over our head. So I don't really feel like I was too affected by them. But here it was too hot. Like, you were just like already sweating. So to put a sheet over your head is like suffocating, right? And so we were both just laying there getting bit by these things, and we couldn't do anything about it. And, you would try to fall asleep, and they would just, like, hover around your face. And you guys, it was bad. It was so bad. And so, we both were, like, it's like 3 a.m., and I'm like, I don't even know if I've slept at all, Cliff. And he's like, I know, me too. And he would, like, kind of, like, doze in and out and stuff, and just, like, hoping for a little bit of a breeze to, like, break some of the tension and everything that was going on. And it was just, like, nothing. And so, the next day starts, and I was like, we gotta go. And I, like, looked up where there was kind of, like, a outdoor shop, and I was like, we need to go and look for, like, a tent or something, like a netting of some sort that'll be small enough so these things can't get through there. And again, we considered to get a hotel room and all of that. But, it was really fun camping, so we wanted to continue to enjoy that. But obviously you need to sleep too, and you don't, like, we couldn't get any more, we couldn't afford any more bites. Like, I barely had any more real estate left for them. I'm like, these things were like biting on top of old bites already. So we're like, okay, let's go to this outdoor store. We found some like camping fans, which is cool because we'll be able to use them like later. They're like battery operated. We found a netting, but it didn't work very well. The netting holes were still too big. But within doing this, and why I'm sharing this experience with you, is and relating it all back to adversity, because I'm not just bitching about this time with mosquitoes. Um, but I think another point, and this is only the point of adversity, is it's a time to experience kindness. So obviously not every single experience of adversity has an outcome where you get to experience kindness, but usually I would think most of them do, because we have to rely on people for things. And I have a really hard time doing that. I like to do things on my own, and I like to problem solve and all of that on my own. But it's really cool when people go out of their way to help you. So our neighbor that was in the RV, so when I told you we had to switch campsites, we were on one side of him one night and on the other side of him the next night. And so Cliff had gotten to talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, how are you guys doing?" And he understands it's really hot, and he was like, "Yeah, we used to camp like that, but we're too old now and whatever." And so Cliff mentioned about how the no-see-ums were really hard, and he was like, "Oh, we've dealt with that so much." So his wife had a little, they're called Air Naturals, and I'm gonna get one because it was really cool, but it's just essential oil that you put into water, and it kind of heats it up and makes it steam. And so when it steams out this essential oil smell. And so, obviously citronella smell and stuff like that, bugs don't really care for. And so he brought over an extension cord with this thing to plug in for us so that we could keep it in the tent. And let it diffuse, the steam in the tent, and it made it smell really good. And then I think it actually did help kind of keep them away. And then he also not only did we have our little fans, but then he brought over a bigger fan that we could use too. And so the next night was so much better because we had 3 fans in the tent, and then his little diffuser as well. And it was just so cool that this complete stranger who has, no idea who we are and vice versa, is so willing to help make us just that little bit more comfortable. And so my point of telling you all this is I think not only do you appreciate even more the simple things in life, right? A little fan and some smelling, nice smelling aroma is gonna change so much for you. But when you're going through an experience and again dealing with a natural force like mosquitoes and no-see-ums, there's nothing you can really do, and we're spraying bug spray all over us, and we have 100% deep backwards I don't know, probably have cancer from this shit. But no, I'm just kidding. But it's better than getting bit, because who knows what these little bugs have and are transmitting to you. But it's just just the relief of just having a little breeze and all of that, and then getting to experience kindness from somebody. Even though that stuff was so fucking shitty, it's oh my God, we're laying there and it's so hot and these little bugs are all over us. To go through that and then to be able to experience what this man did for us was just so cool, because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to talk to us at all. We might have gotten by the next night without that stuff he gave us, but what he gave us certainly made a huge difference. And definitely a learning experience. I mean, we're not going to go camping in a tent in Florida again, probably. We'll probably tent camp other places. But in Florida, I think when we go back there to camp, we'll have a structure of some sort, even if it's a small one, because that was rough, guys. That was really rough. All right, so I have one more point before I wrap it up. This episode is definitely a little bit longer. Hope you guys have time for it, since we're not every single week yet. But I just feel like there's so much to this topic to cover. So, adversity is such a thing, and we've been talking about something that people experience. And so I want to kind of bring it back to the holiday season that we're about to experience. If what they say is true about the shipping containers and just, things not being on the shelf that usually are, things that we kind of take granted for, like, people are going to feel it this year. And, if you're somebody who really gets into the spirit of the holidays by buying things, which majority of us are like that, it feels good to buy things for people or buy a cute new decoration or be able to buy something and make that great dish. It might be a little harder for you. So also, a lot of us for me this year, I don't have an opportunity to see my family at all. The last few years, I have hosted Thanksgiving, and so my mom and my grandparents come down, and then whoever else can come will come down as well when we were living in Alabama. I've also hosted Thanksgiving several times in New York, and so that was always fun because we would go to the parade and sometimes have to get a little creative what dinner was going to look like. But I spent my first Thanksgiving. Yeah, well, okay, sorry. Thanksgiving, I'm like trying to think like all my scenarios. Thanksgiving, I didn't usually go home for. So once I left, I don't think I have. Once I left for college, I never went back home for Thanksgiving. The first Thanksgiving that I had in New York City, I think I had to work that day. And I don't think I had friends in the city at all. I think everyone that I knew had like gone home. But I was going home for Christmas, and so I was like, I can't really afford to like go home for both. And it was really depressing day. I was very sad. So after that, I always made sure I had plans for Thanksgiving because I was like, I don't like this. I don't like enjoying this without my family. But yeah, so my point is though, like, this year is definitely different for me and for my family since, we've gotten very used to them coming to me, and it's not an option this year. But, I'm sure I'm still not the only family. A lot of us didn't have get-togethers last year because of the pandemic, and, some people might still be doing that this year, still not comfortable seeing people and, doing things. And so, this is a weird time and we're all still trying to figure it out. And then to put on top of it, not being able to like do your usual holiday shopping that might be so much fun for you, or, not being able to make some of the things that you want to. Hopefully none of this is actually true and like everything is on the shelves like we need it to be, right? But this might be one of those years that, you're going to face some of these challenges. And so I think another point, and kind of my last point to adversity, is just like the problem solving aspect that comes to it. And I've already kind of like, talked on this a little bit, but it's like when you're faced with these difficult times or more challenging times, you can still make it memorable. And I think that's really cool that like adversity can also bring this aspect of like creativity to it. So, things aren't exactly how you want it to be, but you can still make the holiday season really special. And I think so much of this holiday has become commercialized, and it really kind of bothers me. Don't get me wrong, I love getting gifts. It's like my favorite thing. But I realized one of the reasons why I love getting Christmas gifts is because I knew that was one of the only years I could ask for things. Again, I did not have like a super like overprivileged childhood. So I got presents for Christmas, my birthday, and then school shopping clothes. And then sometimes in the spring, summertime, I would get new clothes if I had outgrown like shorts and stuff like that. But yeah, those were my times to ask for things. And so I still practice that. I don't like really buy, like, kind of now that I'm like married and we have like a more like stable income, I do feel more comfortable like going out and buying things that like, I might want, versus just need, at a need aspect. But there's still things that I'm like, oh, I would really love to have this. I'll ask for it for Christmas. But I also know, like, my family, we love giving gifts to each other too. So it's like, I know people are going to buy me something, and not to sound like I'm a brat about that, but it's just like, okay, I know the gifts are going to happen. So, I'm like, hey, let me tell you guys something that I really want so you can feel really good giving it to me. But this year, we have just decided not to do that at all. And part of that was because the shipping here to Japan is going to take several months. And so it's hard to say how quickly things may get here and vice versa, sending it back home. The other thing that we kind of thought about was doing all the shopping before we left, and then me sending out gifts to my family, and if my family wanted to send gifts to us, making sure that we got them to package, like put them in our main shipment. But I thought about it, and I was just like, this isn't even what Christmas is about. And all of us are going to run around being crazy people, buying gifts for each other. And for what? For things like, this is really silly. So I kind of just had this idea, and as much as I love giving gifts and I love getting them, I put my big girl pants on this year. I decided, maybe we don't do this year, and we'll give it a try. And if it feels good and whatever, then maybe we continue it. If it feels weird and sad, then we'll go back to giving gifts, and we'll have more time to prepare for it. But I knew for us personally, like, we had all these other expenses of moving, to put the pressure on us to, like, also buy all these gifts for everybody. It didn't feel good this year to do that. And then, to ask for anything when I'm not in a giving spirit, I didn't feel like was appropriate either. And so this year for me is definitely more about enjoying Christmas for the more like spiritual and aspect of it, and maybe finding some other joys that I've kind of lost that I haven't felt in a while, that have been kind of like clouded by the other more commercialized aspects of Christmas. So we'll see how it goes. But my point of telling you all this is, like, my scenario might not be that different than a lot of other Americans, where the gift giving and the receiving is not going to be the same and all of the stuff. So what kind of things can you do and can still make this holiday so special? Because we all know deep in our hearts that if you celebrate this time of year, you're celebrating it because of this like warm, wonderful thing that it does. And it's also a reflection of so many different things. The last year that that you had, looking into the future, how you can show kindness to people, and fun little things that you can do, right? And so, like, how if Christmas isn't going, or just the holiday season in general isn't going to look the same for you this year, think about how you can make it special. And I'll just say, like, one of my most favorite Christmas memories ever was, I think it was Christmas Eve, and I would say it's my immediate family because it felt like that at the time, but it was my mom, my two uncles, my uncle's wife, and my grandparents. And I can't remember if my mom was married yet or not, but we were all just like sitting in the living room, and someone had gotten a projector and like for like old movies and like the projector screen. And so they had all these old movies that like we hadn't seen in such a long time because they didn't have a way of seeing them. And I got to see like my family when they were younger, and even some like other family members and stuff, like when my grandma and my grandpa were younger. And we had like the tree lit, and we got to eat pizza. We had never eaten pizza, I think, on at Christmas, so I thought that was so cool. I ended up stubbing my toe really bad on this like cast iron sleigh decoration that was out. And it hurt really bad and it kind of messed my toenail up, I remember, but I didn't care. I was having so much fun. And it was just like really cool to see all those videos. And, I wasn't even in any of them. And I still was having a great time. And I don't know, I was probably like 8 or 9. I remember it was right before any of the other grandkids came along. So that might also be, I had everyone to myself. So that might have also been why it's one of my favorites. But I'm just saying this as an example because it's just, there's some really cool ways to make memories with your family and to enjoy this time of year. And it doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't have to be through these crazy excursions people go on. It can be really simple and sweet. And I just want to remind everybody about that because it might feel challenging this year. It might feel hard, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a bad experience. It doesn't mean that it has to, be bad. It means it can be something different. And you might have, this adversity of it all might bring this opportunity to make it even better, make it even more memorable for someone. So I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching today and listening to me talk about adversity. I hope it wasn't too down and that you feel uplifted by some of my ideas. Although adversity can be tough, I think it makes us better humans. And then some of the points that I made this week, and I'm reading what I wrote down so that I can make it sound more cohesive altogether. When you experience that adversity, you don't forget those times. You are grateful for when life is more at ease. You remember you'll get through it when life might throw you another fastball. I didn't talk about that quite as much, but when we experience these hard times, that other hard times are going to come along. And so it's a good reminder to just understand that when you're going through things, that you're going to go through them. You're going to get to another side. It just takes time, and some of them are harder than others, right? So, but we learn that from having these more, challenging experiences. You may get to experience kindness or have the opportunity to give kindness. Again, like when you have adversity, usually somebody comes in there and kind of gives you a lending hand at some point. Even if it's not like super direct, like whatever that is, like it's really cool that people enjoy helping people out at certain times. And then when you're on the up and up, to be able to see someone who's going through something and then be able to give them kindness in return, it's really cool experience to be able to share because in a world that's so crazy like we live in, to have those moments and to experience those things, whether you're on the receiving or giving end of it, it's really nice that we can still have those moments and that they're still there and that there are these opportunities. And you don't have opportunities for kindness unless somebody needs it, right? So even though adversity is hard, it brings out a really cool aspect of people that we don't always get to see. And then last, it forces us to problem solve, get creative. Again, having a difficult time, having a challenging time. If you get creative, it might be a really cool time, So, yeah, you might not get your kid the coolest bike this year for Christmas because they're out of it, or the newest whatever, right? But maybe you guys get to have an experience that, is going to mean so much more to your person that you wish you could have given something to. So, your kids, your family, they're not going to remember every little gift that was given to them. Things are really cool to get and it's really fun, but think about those memories. Everyone has a memory of opening, well, maybe not everyone, but most people have memories of opening presents on Christmas morning with their family. There are a few presents in my mind that stick out because, yes, I was over the moon to get them as a child and even as an adult. But the things that really make me feel good, and a lot of those too, like those presents, like one of the presents was a Cinderella dress that was made for me, and I thought that Mrs. Claus made it, and then I found out later in life my grandma and my godmother made it for me. And even still, like, it was a Cinderella dress, and I loved it so much, and you could tell it was handmade and that it was so perfect. Um, so even though I think it was a little difficult for them to make, it was still like a gesture of love, you know? And so that's a cool memory to have. But like, I have all these other memories that are so much more important than like the little things that I asked for Christmas. And most people are like that. It's like, unless this was something that like you've always dreamed of having and someone gave it for you, then you're going to remember those sorts of things. But it's cool to get creative. It's cool to kind of go outside of the box and basically, just don't feel defeated when you're in these scenarios. Like, just because you're not in whatever scenario you want to be in doesn't mean you can't still figure out how to make it a good time. So, anyways, it's up to us, right? It's up to us to make whatever the experience it is into a positive one, or to just accept it as a learning experience and, try not to repeat it again. So, and not that it's a choice. No judgment here in any of these scenarios. It's about just making what we can of it. And yeah, so I think you got the point, right? I think you guys get it. Adversity isn't bad. Adversity can be really good and can teach us things and help us understand better. It has so many things to it that make us better people. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. And I hope you guys find it interesting as well. Again, I hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving with your family and friends. While you're navigating this holiday season, just remember things are different. It doesn't have to be like it always has been. Get creative, get fun. If you're able to go all out, do it. Do it all. Make it memorable in whichever way you want. But also maybe take some time and think about it. I mean, I'm definitely going to be thinking about a lot of stuff this year because, it doesn't even feel like Thanksgiving to me. It's so weird right now. We are in a disarray. We don't have any of our things. Luckily, my neighbor, she invited us over for Thanksgiving. They've never met us or barely talked to us. And like I said, when you have certain experiences, because I'm like, well, maybe we'll just sit at home and stare at each other. Or maybe I'll make soup or something, because I don't have enough to make. Like, I can't make a turkey if I wanted to. But here, someone reaches out and showing kindness, and it's really cool to get to experience that. So thank you guys so much for watching, as always. Please like, subscribe, comment. Love to hear from you guys. If you're doing something really cool for Christmas this year, let me know, or for the holiday season. If you have a cool story to share about Thanksgiving or whatever it is, the New Year's, at any time throughout this season into the new year, I'd love to hear from you guys. You can always email me if you don't feel like commenting. I think I'm going to start something new here soon, so stay tuned for that. I have to work out how it's going to look, but I want to get more interactive with you guys, and so I think this would be a really cool thing to do. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, just thank you and have a great rest of your week. Have a great holiday season, and I'll see you guys soon. Cheers. Bye.